I'm going to stand here because when it does go up, I don't have to reposition myself. Right?
You mind if I bother you standing?
Not at all.
Will you hug me first? I need one.
Thank you.
Thank you, baby doll.
Hey everybody, I'm an addict named Duke.
Yeah, you are.
And I guess we came up with this idea, me going first, because my topic is raising children and her topic is raising grandchildren. So the children always come first. I guess it's what they say. If I would have known grandchildren would be so fun, I would have had them first. First of all, I'm going to qualify a little bit. Not much, just touch on it. I started using at a young age, 13 years old, and by the time I was 15 years old, I had a needle in my arm. And what become a dope shooting, pill popping, whiskey drinking, beer guzzling, pot smoking, coke snorting, manipulating, lying, cheating, self-centered, and all I thought about was myself. And it took me a long time to get out of that self mode. And sometimes I'm not even out of it today, make no mistake. But I never considered what it would be like to live a totally responsible life, because that's all I did was I got up and I thought about how I was going to get high, what I would do. I mean, I'm not going to try to sell myself as some hardcore street junkie, because that's not what I was. I just like to use. That's what I did. Whether it was smoking pot, like I said, I did it all. But it's not like I just lived. And that's so. But I did think about myself all the time. And I guess I got to a point to where I ended up, oh, here I am. Hey, everybody. Hi. I'm an addict named Duke. Hey, Duke. So like I said, I started using it at 13, and I ended up getting clean at 31. Now, since this topic is about raising children, I was so caught up in my life that I never really considered that to be part of my life. Maybe in the back of my mind, I thought that one day I would, but I remember one morning I got up, got with my buddy, we hopped on our motorcycles, we went to the beach, because I lived right near the beach, went down there and we were drinking beer and smoking pot at about 8:30 in the morning. And then we decided to ride our motorcycles. So all we did was ride up and down the coast, up to Pompano and then back down to Miami. We stopped at little tiki bars and we pulled over to get, it was just a crazy day. At the end of the day, I was so loaded. I'm sitting on my motorcycle and all of a sudden I see this silhouette walking from the water, blonde hair, the boobs are bouncing, and she's walking right towards me. And I'm thinking, wow. And it's like this angelic silhouette, man. I'm thinking, man, she's walking towards me. And she had met me before because I used to bowl with her sisters. And she goes, hi. And I mumbled some while I'm spitting and drooling all over myself. Well, whatever I said that day, it worked because I ended up marrying her and having 3 kids. But I met her in such a point, and I tell you, her and I, we didn't have until I got clean, that's all we did. We just used together. But, she ended up being my wife and the mother of my children. And I would have never thought that it would come, what would happen that day that I don't even hardly remember. I just remember her walking up. But I remember one day I get off of work and I walk into my apartment and there's these rose petals on the floor. And the first thing I'm thinking is, what the hell did she do? Make a mess? And I'm looking and there's a trail and I'm saying, oh, wow. And now my second thought is, wow, I'm going to get lucky. So I thought they were going back towards the bedroom. So I go back towards the hallway and then all the bedrooms over here and I see the rose petals go around to the right. And I'm thinking, no, that's not the bedroom. So I follow the rose petals and in there on the vanity in the bathroom, there's this cup with a little stick in it. So I pick it up and there's a plus sign on it. And I said, oh, wow. And she shakes her head and she smiles. And all of a sudden, just like that, Just like that. That dope shooting, pill popping, whiskey drink, you know, the whole thing. The manipulating, the self-centeredness, all that stuff went right out the window. And I said, man, I'm going to be a father. My whole life changed. It's amazing how the psyche took place that moment when I realized I was going to be a father. Everything I ever thought about life had changed in that moment. And I made a commitment that I was going to do and be the best father I could be. So we ended up moving on. I had a daughter. My daughter was born, and we were very good parents, her and I, both of us. I cut my using back to a minimum. I mean, I picked up a second job. I became very responsible. So at that time, because of that, I never really considered, and I had no idea, and this is only, I had no idea about the disease of addiction. I had no idea I suffered from the disease of addiction. All I thought is I just used the way I did because whatever reasons, covering up maybe my pains of my youth, my insecurities of my life. I mean, whatever it was, I didn't know why I used it. I didn't think about it. But I didn't know there was any such thing as the disease of addiction. So I ended up, getting very responsible, had the first child, and then my son was born. She got pregnant with my son pretty quick. So he was born, I guess they were 15 months apart. Now my son was born in critical condition. He was preemie. So he had, his lungs split. So basically I'm starting to, when I was in the delivery room for my son, all of a sudden all these lights start going off and horns start signing and everyone's pushing me out of the way and they grab my son. He's turning blue. And my first thought is, oh man, God is paying me back for all the carnage I've caused in my life. He is paying me back for my sins. And that's what I literally thought that, because I grew up in a Greek Orthodox church and God was always, the religion was always part of it. So I thought I was being punished. And I thought, wow, man, I'm going to lose my son. But that wasn't the case. He came out 8 days in ICU and he got healthy. And then, so that was in November of '87. So Christmas, I told my wife, I said, look, let's celebrate our good fortune. And I said, look, we got 2 beautiful kids. I have a great job. I'm a union electrician. Got a house. We bought the house. And I said, let's celebrate our good fortune. I said, we'll have a party. I said, let's get a gram of cocaine. Now, take in mind, for the last 2 years, I've been moderately using, nothing like I had in the past. So we get a single gram of cocaine on Christmas Eve. And we had a party. 9 months later, I had spent over $70,000 snorting coke, drinking whiskey, drinking beer, and smoking pot 7 days a week. It got to the point, I mean, I love my kids. I would have taken a bullet, and even to this day, I'd take a bullet to protect my children, but I had gotten to a point where I used against my will, and I couldn't stop using to save my kids. I watched my life crumbling around me. I got to the point where I couldn't even deposit money in the bank. I was separating my paychecks, and I was working on an overtime job, so I was making a bunch of money. I'm separating my paycheck into 7 piles, so I knew exactly how much I could use every day. And I got to the point where I wanted to stop, kind of, but I couldn't. Doesn't matter that I love my kids. The love for my children was irrelevant. I used against my will, which tells us in our first step, one of the definitions of powerlessness is using against our will. And I sit there, and the closer I got to the end, the more desperate I got. The closer I got to the end, the more I was getting, I felt more useless. The more I felt more worthless. The more I felt helpless. The more I felt powerless. I mean, I felt like just a worthless human being that I couldn't even raise my children right. I was about to lose everything. I fell behind on all my bills because back then, before the electronic age, they didn't disconnect your power after 1 month. They gave you like a 3-month grace period. I was like 3 months behind on all my bills. They all start calling me. And I'm about ready to throw it all away. That's the point I got to. It was so bad that about a week or so before I went and checked myself into a treatment center, and I'm not condoning treatment. It was just my path to Narcotics Anonymous. But I checked about a week before, and I'm sitting there driving down the road, and I felt so useless that the thought of driving my car into a telephone pole, and I said to myself, my children would be better off without me because I am useless. And that's where my active addiction had brought me. After 18 years of using, I had never felt like that. Never felt like that until this moment. Now that I learned was a gift of desperation. The morning of September 15th, 1988, I woke up one morning after using the night before, and I had this moment of clarity. And my kids, I got in a big fight with my wife, and my kids, my daughter, she's 2 years old, she's curled up in the corner of the bedroom. My son was 1, he's in the crib, shaking that thing violently, screaming and crying. I was tossing my wife around the house like a rag doll, and she's laying on the floor in the middle of the living room, hugging a plant, dirt all over the place. I tore plants and shut. I just tore my house apart. This is where my active addiction brought me. And then just like that, boom. And I learned later that would be my divine intervention. Man, I'm sure I had them before, but at that moment I said, man, I need to do something. Everybody I love is screaming and crying. So I went and checked myself into a treatment center. Now, I thought that, that would be the answer, and it was for a while. I did very well. I got clean, and my wife ended up resenting me because now she lost her partying buddy. She wasn't ready. She didn't feel like I felt. So I go and I check myself in, I get out, and I find myself a home group right away. Right away, I walk into a meeting called the New Attitudes Group. And it was an awesome meeting, speaker discussion meeting. However, let me tell this, for the first 6 weeks, I kept driving 30 miles from my house to a treatment center because I was going to the meetings afterwards. They had like all the after meetings after, and I'm thinking, okay, and I didn't really pay attention. I was kind of caught up in some self-centered behavior. And after about 6 weeks, I got tired. Some guy asked me, he goes, hey, how you doing? I said, I'm not doing too well. I said, why not? I said, man, I'm having to drive 30 miles to go to a meeting every night. And he goes, where do you live? I said, I live down the hall. He goes, you ever seen a meeting list? And I said, a meeting? Now, 6 weeks. I said, a meeting list? And he brings me over, he puts his arm around me, walks me over to the literature table, and he says, yeah, a meeting list. And I pull up a meeting list, and I'm looking, I said, there's meetings in all these places? And he goes, yeah. I said, oh my God, I'm looking right here. One day a week, there was a meeting a block and a half away from my house on the same street. I said, son of a gun. I spread my wings. I said, son of a gun. So I found my home group, and I realized that Narcotics Anonymous was bigger than that room. Now, the thing is, I'll be honest with you, I was having an affair with a woman in the treatment center that I met, one of those detox romances. I was, and that's what kept me going up there, and I didn't pay attention to anything but her. And I did that, and I right after I realized that, at 6 weeks, that's when I realized, I was like, what am I doing? And I started feeling this ache in my heart because of what I'm doing. I said, man, I'm trying to change my life. I'm cheating on my wife. I said, this is crazy. So we broke it off, and that's when the guy asked me that. So I ended up finding in my home group. And it wasn't, it started, then it didn't last long because my marriage started to get a little rocky. My wife resented me. She started using. And when I had about 5 years clean, she was using pretty regular. So I forced her into a treatment center because I'd come home and she'd be passed out in the bathroom or something, and the kids would be walking around aimlessly and, without supervision. And I got a little nervous, and it got really difficult because during this 5-year period, it progressively got worse. It went from good to not so good to bad to pretty bad to worse, to where a point where I was afraid to go to work and leave her alone with the kids. So I forced her into a treatment center, and I said, look, you need to do something. And I said, if you don't, I'm gonna get you put into the courts. And she said, okay, I'll get help. So I knew the guy who ran the detox, and he let her in with my insurance. And little did I know that in that detox that she would meet her next husband. I had no idea. I did the same thing, but I didn't let it take me out of my marriage. So what's good for the goose is good for the gander. But she met her next husband in that detox. See, I didn't do that. She steps out of treatment, and the first thing she says to me when she gets home is, "I want a divorce." I said, "Are you sure?" I said, "Because, we suggest that you don't make any major changes. Like, you're not thinking, She goes, but by this point, what I didn't realize, she was already in love. She was in love. She fell in love with, how that romance, whatever it was, because I know we have this metamorphosis. We change into a different person, and she was in love with this guy. She wasn't going to hear anything I had to say. I don't care. I would have promised her the moon. The money, I would have promised her everything, but she was in love and she wanted a divorce. And it started a 2-year custody battle. And I know this is about raising kids, but there's this is like part of my story, and it's a big part of it, because with 5 years clean, the bottom of my recovery fell out. I thought I had arrived. I walk into a room with 5 years clean, and by that time, I walk in a room, there was this Duke. It's like, I'm the Duke of NA. I thought I had arrived. 5 years clean, man, I'm the bomb. But man, when this happened, the bottom just, boom, come right out. And I'm thinking, wow, man, I must not have been as secure in my recovery as I thought. I was in pain, man. I was suffering, man. I was living in fear. The uncertainty of my life, and she moves this guy into my house, and he's tucking my kids into bed. She's trying to get me out of the picture, and I am fighting for my kids. I was not going to walk away. That's not what I learned. I love my kids. I had 3 of them at this time. And I'd sit there and do everything I could. I remember, I'm coming home, and my sponsor, he loves this story. I'm dropping my kids off at the house, and I'm going to go to a meeting, and I drop them off, and I have this big picture window in the front of my house, and I see this guy. He's got no shirt on. He's walking across my living room like this, stretching with no shirt on, and all of a sudden, boom, my heart starts beating out of my neck. I pull up, and I got my kids with me, so I pull up, and I said, if I ever see it, I'm going to jump through the window. I'm going to choke the life out of that guy. And I'm looking at my kids, and I'm thinking, okay, calm down, Duke. I got to be a father. I got to be a good representative of what's spiritual here. So I calmed down. I said, look, I don't ever want to see that again. I said, when I pull up with these kids, I said, he better stay in the bed. So my kids, I want them to feel comfortable. So I pulled off. I peel on out there. I go to a meeting, and I'm at this meeting, sharing, and it's in this little room, and man, my heart's still beating out of my neck. Boom, boom. You couldn't imagine. And all of a sudden, I'm sharing some vile stuff. I was very angry. I'm sharing detail about what I wanted to do to her and him. And people are kind of like listening to me, like standoffish, but I'm getting it all out, man. And then at the end of this meeting, see, it's funny because we never know how we're going to affect somebody in our recovery. So at the end of the meeting, this guy comes bopping across the room. He starts like all hip, slick, and cool, walking up to me. And, I didn't really know him. And I said, so what are you looking at? He goes, that was good shit. And I look at him, I said, what? He goes, oh yeah, I like what you said. I said, bro, you're sick. I said, that was not good. He goes, oh man, it was. He goes, will you sponsor me? And I'm thinking, after what I shared, that was so vile, and this guy wants me to sponsor. I said, man, you need help. I said, I'll sponsor you. So, but we don't know. We don't know what's gonna work and who's gonna get this. That guy just celebrated 26 years clean. It's amazing. So, and he was looking at what I was sharing as something that he wanted. I thought he was sick. I wanted to keep my distance from him. But anyways, it worked out. But I went through a 2-year custody battle, and ultimately I got custody of my 3 children. And she ended up moving out of the state. Then the real work began. And I'm telling you something, it was the hardest thing, coming from where I'd come from, to be a single father. And I did not want to deprive my kids of all their childhood stuff. So, I ended up coaching baseball. My son played baseball during the baseball season. I ended up was an assistant coach with the football team, so my son played football. My daughters cheered. My daughters were in dance. And I tell you what, I had to learn how to balance my life in recovery and the meetings along with raising kids. Because back then, meetings weren't as kid friendly, or at least not for a guy. They might have been for women. They might have been more accepting of a woman bringing her children in. And I don't want to sound sexist, but that's just the way it is. And they weren't as kid friendly. So I kind of struggled with bringing my kids to meetings, but they came to all my meetings with me, especially since a lot of times we were doing baseball and football. So after the practices, I'd stop at a meeting on the way home. You know, so I went through this battle, and it was really difficult. It was a tough time in my life. I mean, it took a toll on me, but I had a sponsor who guided me through this stuff, and I had women in my life who helped me when they had the female issues, along with my sisters, because there's things I had no idea. I mean, I just had no idea. I thought it was just waking them up, you know, and getting them ready for school, and it was a lot more than that. I went through all the major changes, the emotional changes, the hormonal changes in all their lives. And let me tell you something, if I ever, you know, talking about having to work or apply spiritual principles in my life, that was the time during this, all this stuff. Now, my daughters were, I had to keep an eye on every swinging dick that was around, because I had 2 daughters and they wanted to go out with guys. Now, what do? I know what I was like when I was going out. I mean, I'm still paying the price today. I mean, it's like I'm having another grandchild and it's another girl. And I say, man, God is just paying me back tenfold. I'm having to really be, because I was very disrespectful towards women. Just look at my shirt. You know, girls like this. I love this shirt. See? Shit, I can't get on my toes high enough. Anyway. But anyways, I had to learn a lot of things about you know, the personality of my daughters. And my son, I had to make sure my son was respectful towards people, that he wasn't like me, you know, and that was a lot of work. I mean, there's so much stuff in the steps that I learned about raising kids, and I applied almost all of it to raising kids. You know, my kids never really got in trouble. They all got caught shoplifting. All 3 of them had their bout with shoplifting. And I remember I was with my kids at the mall, with them, in a department store, and my son decides to steal an earring because he thought it was cool, and he puts it in his ear, and I wasn't paying attention. I didn't even know he had an earring. And all of a sudden, the cop comes racing out of the store, and I'm with him, and I mean, talk about how embarrassing that is. And I go in there, and I was going to wring his neck, and the cops had to pull me back because I was about ready to punch this kid for doing that. While I'm with you, I mean, I wouldn't have punched him, but I probably would have smacked him or something. But it's like, you know, I had to learn, okay, I had to keep my cool. But you know, all 3 of my kids got caught shoplifting. My kids did not. I have one child who was actually an addict, who was part of the fellowship. Now, raising them, their mother moved out of the state. And as much of a resentment as I had towards their mother, I knew that I wanted to make sure that she was a part of their life. So I went over and above to make sure that they didn't just eliminate her. So I would actually drive them up to where she lived or close to it. She can meet me part of the way. And I did what I could. You know, and today they have a relationship. It's not much, but they have a relationship with their mother. And I wanted to make sure that I was part of that I wasn't part of the one that severed that relationship. I wasn't going to hold that responsibility. But you know, but anyways, my kids have all done well. My son has 3 children, and his using was minimal. I mean, he might drink, smoked a little pot, but today he doesn't do any of that. My daughter never did any of that. My other daughter never smoked pot. I think she might have smoked 2 cigarettes, and I don't even think she drinks. She might have a beer now and then, but that's her. And she's got 3 kids. And my oldest daughter, the first one born, who was the one where the apple didn't fall far from the tree, she started using. And I remember, you know, when she started using, I didn't pay a lot of attention to it because I was busy working, raising kids. And then she got to the point to where she was hitting her bottom. And here I am with all this clean time, over 20 years clean. And I remember trying to, you know, reach out to her. So threaten her. What the hell are you doing? Do you know, blah, blah. I tried the whole thing. Then I tried to reason with her. Honey, do you know what happens? I mean, this is why you feel like this. And then I tried to empathize with her. I said, honey, I've been there. I know what and I tried everything, the compassion, the love, you name it. I tried it. Then I go back to the yelling and the screaming. What's the matter with you? And I mean, no matter what I tried, I'd never thought that, she's an addict, and until she's ready, she's not going to get this. Now, but this is my own daughter. This isn't just like another addict in the room, the newcomer. This is someone very close to the vest, very close to my heart. This is my daughter. But finally, after a while of battling this, realizing I wasn't getting anywhere, I went back and I said, you know what, I have the third step. And it took me a while to get there, because when you have clean time, sometimes you feel like you can control a situation. I don't know, maybe you can't. I thought I could control the situation, but I couldn't. So I have this third step. And finally I said, you know what? I've exhausted every opportunity here. So I hit my knees one night. I literally got on my knees and said, God, let your will be done. I said, whatever it is. I said, but wait. I said, I hope your will is to get her help. I mean, I'm negotiating with my higher power. I said, I hope your will is to get her into a meeting with me. I hope that's what I said. But then I said, but whatever it is, let it be done. And I said, and if it's something that I need a stronger back for, I said, please give me the strength and the courage to accept whatever your will is. And I was never been so profound in a prayer to my higher power than I was to try to save my daughter's life. And I'm sitting there on my knees, and I started to cry. I said, oh my goodness, I just gave all my power to God. I mean, I'm thinking to myself, wow, I did this. But literally within, I think 3 days later, I'm sitting on my bed, I'm on my computer, my laptop. And my daughter comes in and she sits at the end of my bed. She says, Daddy? I said, yeah, honey. And I'm waiting. Oh, there's this deafening silence there. She doesn't say a word, and I'm just waiting for her to say something. I'm saying, say it. I said, yeah. I said, yeah, honey, what's up? And she goes, I need help. I said, yeah. I said, oh, okay. I'm trying to be nonchalant. I don't want to be overly excited, So I said, well, what would you like to do? And she goes, I don't know. I said, would you like to go to a meeting? Because she's been to many of them. She goes, okay. And it's about 11:30 in the morning on a Saturday. I said, good, get ready. We're going to go to a noon meeting. She goes, already? And I said, yes. And I brought her to a noon meeting at the West Broward Club. It's a clubhouse that we have in Plantation, Fort Lauderdale. I brought her to a noon meeting, and then she came back for the 8:30 meeting, and then she stayed for the 10 with all the young folks. She went to 3 meetings her first day. And I brought her to her meetings the next day. I brought her to a meeting on Monday, and I hurried up and I introduced her to who would become her sponsor. And I said, look, I want you to meet my daughter. I need you two to exchange phone numbers. You can do it right now while I'm sitting here watching it. But I stayed on her case for about a week, and then she yelled at me, and she goes, Daddy, she goes, you're right. I said, that's right. I'm going to make sure you get this, But I ended up leaving her alone, and lo and behold, man, she rocks this fellowship, man. She's head and shoulders above where I was at when I had her clean time. And and she just recently, I presented her with a 10-year medallion, so she celebrated 10 years. And you know what? And she presented me with a birthday present. She goes, and she wants to give me as present. And she goes, I need to give it to you. And it's about a week before Christmas. I said, nah. So wait till Christmas. Everyone's coming over. You can just bring it over. And she races. She lives in Pompano, about 30 minutes from me. And she comes over, and I said, no, honey, you didn't have to come over. And she said, no, I wanted to give this to you. So she gives me this little jewelry box thing. She goes, yeah, I want to give this to you today before Christmas. I said, okay. So I opened it up, and it's one of those sticks with the plus sign on it. I said, you're going to be a mother? She goes, yeah. And I said, Merry Christmas to me. So my daughter is going to be a mother. Now, she's the last one I was waiting for. That will make 7 grandkids for me. But I don't have to raise any of them. I get to spoil them and send them home. Yeah. And you know what? Just right now in my life, I have so much gratitude. I couldn't even express And with everything that I went through from the very beginning, with the custody battle, with the raising the kids, with my daughter using, with all the things that have happened, plus things that have happened in my own personal life. I mean, I 2.5 years ago, I ended up having rotator cuff surgery. And during the pre-op, they found cancer in my kidney. And I had to sit there and tell my children that I had kidney cancer. It's a scary thought. Now, could you imagine? I mean, they all cried. My daughters are like breaking down. No, I can't lose you. It's a scary thought, but see, it's all part of it. And I said, look, I said, I'm going to do whatever I have to do. I'll go through, I'll follow the medical procedures. I'm going to do everything I have to do. But man, just to see how I had raised my kids, how they were affected when I told them I had kidney cancer, it's a testament to how they feel about me. I really feel loved by my children. I really feel I did the best I can do. And could I have done better? Maybe. But you know what? I am so happy with where I'm at. I'm happy with my relationship with my children. I love my children. To this day, I love them as much as I did the day they were born. And it just doesn't change. That's just something, that's a part of the heart that will always be there. And I'm grateful. And I'm grateful for the committee for asking me to come and speak here today. And I'm going to end this with that. And I just want to say thank you all for letting me be here. Thank you.